the answer to complications following childbirth and after certain surgeries, but mesh implants have left thousands in agony and with life-changing consequences. Yet implants are still being carried out and there's been no compensation. I'm happy to be joined now by Kath Sansom, founder of the Sling the Mesh campaign, and Alec Shelbrooke, Conservative MP and co-chair of the Surgical Mesh All-Party Parliamentary Group. Hi, Kath. Good to see you. I'd like to start with you, if I may. Can you just explain your own medical experience after you had children? What happened?
So had two girls. Second baby was £10. She was quite big. All was fine until I hit my mid-40s, and then I started suffering minor leaks. Really, with hindsight, I would perhaps jump on a trampoline, sneeze 3 times, have a bit of an embarrassing accident. So I went to my GP, who forwarded me on to the local hospital, where I was told that physiotherapy didn't work and I could have this amazing surgery. I was told I was very lucky because I was the right candidate to have this surgery, and if I was to go ahead, I'd be back at my desk within a week. So I went for that surgery, super fit. I was highboard diving, boxing, mountain biking, came out in inordinate amounts of pain, and at first I thought that was just because I'd had an operation, but after a week the pain just increased. It felt like someone had hit my legs with a baseball bat. It felt like I'd had them wrapped in barbed wire. My pelvis, my groin were all on fire, burning, like that barbed wire sensation. And that's when I googled up TVT mesh gone wrong, and I came across another woman in Oxford who'd written a blog, and that was when I realised, oh, hang on a minute, these are not ordinary complications. I'm not a mystery patient, and something is really wrong here.
Kath, it sounds absolutely awful. How did you come to work with Alex Shelbrooke MP, who we'll be talking to in a bit, but I want to start with you.
From that first moment, I set up Sling the Mesh for 20 women. It's now got more than 9,400 members. And I didn't stop sending out press releases, writing stories, tweeting about Mesh. We had our first lobby in Parliament in 2017, and an all-party parliamentary group was set up, of which Alec is obviously a key member. And so that's where I met him. And he has always spoken really passionately about the issue in hand, completely understands the medical misogyny, the institutional denial, the lack of data capture, and also has this empathy with the women suffering owing to his constituents. So we're really pleased to have him on board and support us.
I'll be back with you in just a moment. Alec, how did you become interested in campaigning on this?
It fits into two areas, Gloria. First of all, as Kath said, it came through constituents coming to see me, and you'll remember when you were an MP that there are issues that you knew nothing about, and then a constituent comes and sees you. So that's how I became aware of the issue, and very, very quickly realised that this issue was huge. And I think that I keep getting asked the question, why do you as a man carry out women's health issues? Well, first of all, I find that slightly bizarre because more than 50% of my constituents are women, so why wouldn't I represent them? But second of all, I think there's a huge battle here. Kath just used the words institutionally misogynist, sort of a sexist attitude. Too many women for too many years have just been patted on the head and told, don't worry, it will get better, rather than taking these issues seriously. And I think one of my biggest concerns in all of this is that the NHS did this to people, but the NHS is not doing enough to help people afterwards. And what I find heartbreaking about Kath's story is there were obviously complications early on. And if they had removed and said, right, this hasn't worked, it's very painful, then she might be in a much better place today. But what my constituent described to me, who'd had it in place 10 years, that now it's like moving hair from chewing gum.
What can you do? You're obviously in a privileged position. You're not just a campaigner, you're a member of our lawmaking body.
Well, what I want to see happen, I want the Baroness Julia Cumberledge Review implemented.
Tell us about it.
Now, the Cumberledge Review covered off 3 areas. It talked about sodium valproate,
yes,
Primados, and mesh. Now, I've always focused on the mesh issue, but other ones of my colleagues, like Caroline Noakes, have focused on sodium valproate, and Mike Penning has focused on Primados. You know, the different MPs have taken up different areas. But there's two key recommendations in that about redress. And these are the bits that the government haven't taken up. And I find it incredible that you've got thousands and thousands of women, and by the way, Gloria, also men,
Yes.
because this can be anal mesh as well as vaginal mesh and herniated mesh, which is designed to grow the flesh around things. So, but it's a very, very tiny percentage. Mainly we're talking about women. And how can the NHS and how can the government not direct the NHS to deal with this problem? It stuns me. And people's lives are destroyed. My constituent's life in her late 40s, destroyed. She was a physiotherapist. She was fit and healthy, just like Kath. And it's over. She's crippled. She can't move. Her marriage is finished. She has no sexual stimulation at all because she was butchered along the way. This is a woman in her late 40s. I mean, she's slightly older now.
Yeah.
These issues are absolutely appalling, and the least the NHS can do is help sort it out.
Kath, you have set up a campaign as a result of your own experiences. What change do you want to see? Has Alec listed everything you want to see, or are there other things too? What's next for your campaign?
I think a key one for the women is financial redress. The government have said they're not going to offer that because instead they're putting money into patient safety. There's two things going on here. First, we don't see where the money is being put into patient safety yet. But the second is it's sending a very strong message to women who are innocent. And I don't like to use the word victims because it's normally so disempowering. But in this case, they innocently went for a surgery. They've been harmed, but they're being told, well, you just got to put up and shut up because it's happened now. You know, to not give financial redress is appalling. That's really key. What I also want to see is better data capture, and really key in this is the MHRA. They are our regulator. They're supposed to ensure medicines and medical devices are safe. Now, we see that really they're in bed with industry. They're funded on the pharmaceutical side by industry, and on the medical device side, 11% of their staff used to work in industry. But what's more worrying, there is something called the Yellow Card Scheme. Now, that's been running, I only found out this at the weekend, since the 1960s. So it's not a new thing, but still a lot of people just think it's a football term. They don't realise what it is. Now, this is for people to log complications to the government, and it's not mandatory for doctors to log. So it needs to be made mandatory for these complications to be logged, because in the case of MESH, 2/3 of women's stories of suffering went into a big black hole, and it meant that the MESH scandal could go unnoticed for 20 years. So mandatory logging to the MHRA is absolutely key.
Sounds reasonable, Alec?
Well, I think it is reasonable, and I think that one of the great scandals that the Cambridge Review unveiled was this complete lack of data link up or even data collection across the NHS, which you would think would be a fairly simple thing to do, to record where complications in a surgery take place, and especially in a technique, a surgery which came about 20 years ago. It was a new idea, and it was deemed to be this miracle cure. Now, surely in those circumstances, you should be collecting data all the time. And I think one of the problems which occurred here was that for a huge number of women, complications came 8 to 10 years later. And then they were saying, oh, well, it's not linked to that. But it clearly is, because the mesh has broken up, it's embedded itself in bones, it's through fibre. And one of the biggest issues is that there's always been sort of low-level infection. So the body's always been fighting. It wasn't as sterile as it should have been. And at the end of the day, you're implanting a foreign body into your body, an area which is not sealed, if you will, in terms of perhaps other things you might have put into your body, like, for example, a pacemaker or something like that. And as Kath said, you've got to get the data collection, but fundamentally, what we want to see, and I brought the Westminster Hall debate, and I said at the end, this won't go away this will keep growing. It'll end up on the floor of the House saying that the government has got to do the redress of the compensation. Most women don't just want compensation, they need compensation. My constituent has probably lost £500,000 of earnings between where she was in her mid-40s and the end of her career. How can we just sit by and not do anything?
How can we? I mean, what are you going to do to make the government act? Because I think anybody watching would go, well, he's right, isn't he?
Just do what we do, Gloria, get it onto the floor of the House, get the debates going, don't let go. And we've seen lots of campaigns in the past where you keep biting in the Commons, keep nagging at the ministers and get things done. And that's what's got to happen. But I mean, I've got more Westminster Hall debates coming up, because obviously I do the endometriosis work as well. And I'm sort of focusing there. But actually, the issue about the NHS taking women seriously is a far bigger one than I think most people would recognise, unless you're a woman who's got a problem.
Kath, just to comment on what Alec said just now, that it's difficult to get the NHS to take these things seriously. Is that what you and the women that you are in touch with throughout your campaign, is that what you're finding?
Absolutely, and I think it's important to make a point here that it's not just women. So in my campaign group, we also have men suffering from hernia mesh. We have women who've had breast cancer and they've had a particular type of reconstruction that has used mesh. I mean, that one hasn't even hit the media headlines yet. This plastic toxic mesh is used in a lot of surgical procedures because it's quick, easy, and cheap. But what we are not seeing is the lifetime data capture of how that patient fares with a piece of plastic inside their bodies. And what I see on the page is a host of autoimmune conditions. 60% have fibromyalgia, allergies, rashes, like chronic long-term illness, and we need that data capture. We need the NHS to take us seriously when we talk about the mesh illness, if you like, caused by having a piece of plastic inserted inside us. So I thank Alec and all of the MPs who help us continue in the fight to have our voices heard.
Kath, how are you now? You've had the mesh removed. Is it all well and good as far as you are concerned?
So I had the mesh removed. You can never guarantee that it's all out because it is like taking chewing gum out of matted hair. And I would say that every single woman that has a removal has to get used to a new normal. So I can't put any impact on my legs anymore. I can't run. I have to be really careful of my movements. High octanes sport and exercise has always been my go-to for my well-being. So I still do go boxing. I've just returned after a 3-year break, and I've only returned because I've got some really strong pain medication from my doctor so that I can go and enjoy the sport that I love, but also have some pain relief to help me afterwards. And that's me. I'm at the really good end of recovery. I've got a good new normal. There's women in my page, they have blue badges, they're in wheelchairs. 1 in 4 have to use a stick to walk where their legs shake from the pain. So I consider myself really lucky.
I have learned so much by listening to both of you today. Good luck with your campaigning, and thank you for being so passionate, both of you, in what you are trying to do. Good luck. We'll return to this subject again. Alex Shelbrook and Kath Sansom, thank you.
Thank you.